The universe is in danger. The TARDIS is about to blow up, and everything is about to go bad as the Pandorica opens, an Unearthly podcast. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is Sunday afternoon and time for another Unearthly podcast. Today, as we stated, we are covering the Pandorica Opens. I'm Randy Ronson McCulloch, and with me is Bill Man in Black Sylvia and Mad Matt Winchell. How are you guys doing this afternoon?
I got woken up too early, and then I just crammed this in right before lunch.
All right. Well, we like to start these out with actually summarizing the episodes we're about to review. I believe you were planning on doing that, Bill. Take it away.
Yep. All right. We open in France in 1890, where Vincent van Gogh is in a fit of modern Doctor Who's version of depression after making a new painting. Over time, the mysterious painting is delivered into the hands of Prime Minister Winston Churchill, who attempts to call the Doctor. He gets River Song, who escapes from prison, as she is wont to do, and obtains the painting from the Queen of England at some time during the centuries-long reign of Queen Elizabeth X. River buys a vortex manipulator off a man in a bazaar similar to the one from Turn Left. She uses this to inscribe the oldest writing in the history of time into a cliff wall, which the Doctor finds and follows her to a Roman outpost in England. He gets invited to tea by Cleopatra, who turns out to be River, who reveals a painting of the TARDIS exploding. The painting is named The Pandorica Opens, which leads the Doctor and River to go to Stonehenge in search of the mythical Pandorica, where the most feared thing in the universe is hidden. River tells Amy that no one knows exactly how old Stonehenge is, and the Doctor doesn't bother to correct her. They make their way under Stonehenge to find the Pandorica and a dismembered Cyberman. The Doctor discovers that the Pandorica is opening, and River discovers that Daleks, Cybermen, Centaurans, and everybody else with a space navy at this time is jockeying for space over Stonehenge. A brief fight ensues with the dismembered Cybermen. Meanwhile, a Roman who looks like Amy's dead boyfriend Rory volunteers to help defend Stonehenge and ends up saving Amy in the process. Lo and behold, it actually is Rory, who remembers everything from his time aboard the TARDIS. However, since he never existed, Amy doesn't remember him. River, investigating coordinates that led her to the modern day, essentially, discovers that all of the events at Stonehenge are constructed off things in Amy's room, her favorite books and her photographs. River loses control of the TARDIS, and a voice begins chanting, "Silence will fall." Back in Stonehenge, the Romans reveal themselves to be Auton duplicates. Rory can't stop himself from shooting Amy in the stomach just as she remembers him. Zordon then beams the power Daleks down to meet the Doctor. They're followed shortly thereafter by Cybermen, Centaurans, Autons, Sycorax, Jadoon, a Weevil, and a few other Doctor Who enemies. The Alliance reveals that they have predicted the TARDIS will destroy the universe, so they created the Pandorica to prevent that from happening. The Doctor is sealed in the Pandorica as the TARDIS explodes. The next episode opens with Amelia Pond in her childhood. She has grown up on an Earth where there are no stars, yet she somehow remembers them. A mysterious man slips a museum brochure into her house, drawing her to the Pandorica exhibit, which finds ashen Daleks before the Pandorica opens and reveals Amy as an adult. Rory, who is still holding Amy's corpse, gets a visit via vortex manipulator from the Doctor with a fez and a mop, who gives him his sonic screwdriver. Rory uses it to free the non-fez-wearing Doctor, who goads him into punching him to see how human he is. They then trap Amy in the Pandorica for 2,000 years, with the understanding that it will keep her alive. Rory, being made of plastic and therefore ageless, decides to guard her rather than return with the Doctor, using the vortex manipulator that was hidden next to the Pandorica. Luckily, this was not noticed by any of the other races who would have loved advanced time travel technology. Amy learns that Rory may have died in a fire just as one of the Daleks comes to life, revived by the light within the Pandorica. Rory comes out of hiding at that point and shoots the Dalek. The Doctor picks up a fez and a mop and goes back to Stonehenge to give Rory instructions before spending some time setting up the events that led young Amelia to the right place. A non-fez-wearing Doctor appears in front of them and whispers something in the fez-wearing Doctor's ear before the Doctor declares himself dead and states he has 12 minutes. Amelia disappears due to the collapsing universe, and the trio rushes off to find a solution as the Dalek behind them starts to wake up. The Doctor reveals that if there are no stars, the sun in the sky is the TARDIS exploding in an internalized time loop. The Doctor saves River from the time loop, and her first action is to, with Amy's help, destroy the Fez. The Dalek arrives and shoots the Doctor. River shoots the Dalek back as Amy and Rory discover that the Doctor is not as dead as he claimed. He is using the 12 minutes to set up his plan to spread atoms from the Pandorica across the entire universe with the help of the TARDIS. After a trip through memory lane via the cracks in time, the Doctor succeeds and a new universe is created, this time borrowing elements of Amy's memories as her memory is enhanced by growing up next to a crack in time. But something's missing. There's no Doctor. With help from an item of River's, Amy remembers the Doctor, summoning him to the center of her wedding. The Doctor gets a phone call demanding he go off to do a crossover with the Next Generation, and the three go off in the TARDIS once more.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'd like to say that this is my favorite of the three Stephen Moffat-penned season enders we've had thus far. This is not to say this is a good thing, as this means it's the only one that doesn't fill me choking with rage, bile, and hatred.
And that's actually unanimous between the three of us.
Very much.
It's just saying that it's the least of three evils.
Not to
Because
say that still isn't evil.
I would much rather, in my opinion, go watch one of the Russell T Davies enders. I'd much rather watch Army of Ghosts Doomsday that we did last week. I would much rather watch heck, I'd much even rather watch Bad Wolf and Parting of the Ways, as much as I ragged on Bad Wolf 2 weeks ago.
I would probably say the only RTD finale of an actual season that I would rather watch this over is Last of the Time Lords.
I like Last of the Time Lords.
Yeah. I just saw that not too long ago, too. I think I saw it the same weekend again you did.
I would much rather watch Last of the Time Lords than this.
Yes.
And a good chunk of my issue with this, well, not entirely, but one of my key issues with this is River Song.
And let me just bring up one of the references to what River Song does to piss us off. Hello, sweetie.
Bingo! River Song goes to the beginning of history, defaces a monument with 50-foot letters to send a message to the Doctor, which retroactively becomes part of history. This is like violation of Prime Directive number 1 when it comes to time travel.
Not to mention you cannot scream bullshit loud enough.
I mean, this is the way the Doctor was talking about these letters is the same way that if you ever read or listen to any of the Hitchhiker stuff, they talk about the 50-foot tall letters that God left to his creation, and it turns out to be a message from River Song to the Doctor. What the fuck?
Yep.
I think
This
the
was an
biggest
episode-
question of anything is why no other Time Lord ever figured out what it said.
Yes, that was the thing too. There's a lot of stuff which retroactively makes no sense in these two episodes.
And the thing with that is, really the only mindset you can go into this is with the understanding of what Moffat is trying to do. And I'd say the only mindset that can go into it and get a positive rating, and that he's very big on the fairy tale thing, which he does mention in the script several times. And if you look at this story in any other way, it falls apart. If you look at it as a fairy tale, you can kind of see, okay, this is the same type of logic that a child's fairy tale might use. So you can sometimes understand it as a result of that.
But I could also undermine that logic too, because again, look at some of the villains we have. A Weevil? Really? A Weevil is a big
that scene was essentially New Who's version of what the Mind Robber was for the BBC drama costume closet.
Yeah.
They take whatever costume they had and put it on screen.
They kind of didn't. They were going to have a whole bunch of different villains in there, but they didn't have the budget, so they just reused whatever they had on hand.
And it feels like it because there are so many monsters in there. If you look really closely, you can see all kinds of monsters.
I'm not sure if you could see them or not, but I know some of the Sarah Jane Adventures exclusive aliens were supposed to be present there. But I'm not sure if they were name dropped or if they.
Listen to who River Song mentions is in the big list of aliens that's supposed to be there. That's who they were going to have. They were going to have big updated version of the Zygon costumes, which are finally going to see in the special.
Finally.
You know, there was the Draconians were supposed to be there. And they got replaced by the Silurians because they had Silurian costumes. They couldn't afford to do Draconian.
Did a Silurian appear there? Because I didn't see it.
There were at least a couple. There were a couple of Silurians there. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there were some that only featured in like half-second shots, so I'm not surprised if I missed something.
No, they were there for a lot longer than that. They were there just as the Doctor was getting sealed into the Pandorica.
Yeah,
of course, I'm pretty sure at this time all the Silurians.
This was also originally going to be the premiere of the new Cybermen costumes, which we also didn't see until Series 7.
That would have made sense.
Yeah, that would have made more sense. But yeah, they still couldn't afford to.
Correct me if I'm wrong, weren't all the Silurians living underground at this point?
Considering it was 2000 BC, yes. There is. This is the thing about any of Moffat works. He assumes that every race in the universe has time travel and can travel to any point in history.
And he's an idiot for that.
That is probably my main problem. That was one of my main problems with Name of the Doctor, was that anyone can just travel to any point in space or time. It's as though everyone is a vortex manipulator.
For them to do so, yes.
Yeah,
might I add also something I noticed while watching the video, and I'm noticing now in the pictures. The Cybermen mouths don't even light up right anymore at this point. The one close-up that we get of the Cybermen, and it doesn't even fully light up properly.
I can forgive that because I can imagine this episode was not cheap to produce, and that would have been a relatively minor detail for all the visuals that needed to be prepared in time.
But I can understand that for some of the suits in the background, but at the foreground suit, really? You can't just tweak it a little bit and get the thing to work right?
Well, yeah, I guess they were more focused on the Power Rangers and the potatoes.
Well, they were really, really, really low on budget here.
But yeah, here we go.
Actually, wasn't this right around the time when their budget got cut?
This season was when the budget got cut. Season 5. We went from big budgets from seasons 2 through 4, and then the BBC cut back on everybody, and Doctor Who seemed to take the brunt of it. I noticed it almost immediately going into season 5. They gave them, I think, HD cameras, but cut the rest of their budget overall.
Which is a great combination.
especially because I think this was the first co-brand in the United States. No, it wasn't. The first co-brand was Sci-Fi, but this was the first co-brand under, I think, the CBBC Canadian.
Okay.
And that later became a co-brand with BBC America, starting with season 6. But I'm wondering how much that money actually goes to
2010. We were really hopping American stations.
What's that?
So from 2006 to 2010, we were really hopping American stations. I mean, by this point, there was a Showtime crossover.
That was Torchwood. That was something else entirely. Doctor Who started on Sci-Fi in the U.S., I think about a year late, and then caught up, and I think they were there through season 3 or 4.
From what I was led to believe, the United States didn't actually get anything on time with Britain until the Matt Smith era.
It didn't, but it caught up, so that was only like a week or two behind.
Okay.
It wasn't as bad as it was originally, where we were about a year.
It wasn't like they played Parting of the Ways in Britain, and then they finally started playing Rose in America after that.
I will unashamedly say that
after all the American fans had already torrented the episode.
At that point, I was watching it on downloads, because the other issue was that Sci-Fi Channel edited the episodes.
Oh yeah, they did hack jobs on them.
Yeah. And I didn't want my Doctor Who edited. I wanted it unedited exactly as aired, which I think BBC America does.
As far as I'm aware, yes. And I would also add that hack jobs comes in multiple versions. They hacked the episode part, yes, but also a hack was doing it.
It was bad cuts sometimes. Sometimes the cuts were okay. Sometimes they were missing little important bits. But I didn't like that, so I downloaded the broadcast from BBC and always made sure to purchase the DVDs as soon as they came out.
Yeah, that reminds me, I'm a couple years behind on mine. You catch up one of these days.
So that's always been what I've done. And then the Sci-Fi Channel went through this huge reorg. And while they were going through this reorg, they let their license with the BBC lapse on Doctor Who. And it was immediately snatched up by BBC America, who's had it ever since. However, the first year...
And I believe the only changes they make is they add commercials that I do not believe are actually shown in Britain.
Yeah, but I
also
think
don't cut
the episodes are actually filmed with those commercials in mind, so that they can be shown with or without commercials. In other words, they cut scenes based on a certain timing.
Okay, the way American shows do.
Yes, but those scenes can still be shown without the commercials in England. The reason that they do this is starting with, like I said, with Series 6. The show became a co-production between BBC America and BBC Wales. Which means that now, of course, they produce it with both BBC America and BBC Wales in mind, so that they can, so they have the commercial breaks built in
when you need them.
When they need them, but they're not mandatory. If you watch an American show, you can actually watch where it fades out and then fades in, because that's where they had a commercial break scheduled, so they did a fade out. Right. With these, they just make sure there's a proper, decent scene cut in there.
So they can fade out on the scene, on the cut, and then fade back in right after the cut.
Yep. Actually, they don't do so many fades out and fades in anymore. They'll just immediately cut, usually to a commercial break logo, and then go into the commercials. Yeah. And then just break back in with the little TV whatever logo in the corner. On a side note, does anyone remember when a TV show never had anything at all overlaid on it except for maybe the station logo in the lower right-hand corner?
I remember. God,
it wasn't like that in the 90s.
I think it was just like 98, 99. They just started to introduce that, and they've just gone.
I think it depends on the channel, because I remember Saturday morning cartoons would start to have a lot of the Up Next or the
Well, those
keep
were just,
watching
like, little small things
for.
in the corner usually though too.
Yeah.
Nowadays.
But now they've got these big, huge things come up, take a bottom third of the screen with an ad for a completely different show.
Most likely something you don't even.
Oh, I hear you.
About.
Yeah, and
usually,
what's worse is if you're watching an episode that has subtitles. For whatever reason, the people are speaking in a foreign language or whatever. The subtitles come on, the bar goes up, stretches over the subtitles. You can't see a thing. You don't know what the hell they're saying, and you get pissed off. Annoys the crap out of me when they do that. Stations
that
really.
pisses me off on Blip too.
I don't normally have a problem with Blip.
But
YouTube is actually worse.
yeah, this was the year that BBC America had purchased Doctor Who. Actually, I think they'd picked it up with Series 4B, or as I think of it, Series 5, the movie series. And this would be good. And hell, I'll just go full Moffat retcon, and this is actually Series 6. Series 7 was the one with River Song and the Doctor's Wedding, and we're just finished Series 8. Why? Because if Stephen Moffat can retcon it, so can I.
Why not go all the way and say Angels Take Manhattan was the end of Series 8, we just watched Series 9?
We could if we wanted to, because, if Moffat can retcon...
That's how it was aired.
If Moffat can retcon in another Doctor, we can retcon in series in the middle of things. But, there we go, up yours, Moffat.
The titles changed, it was aired months apart, it was essentially a separate season in all but name.
It was. I had a completely different feel, everything.
Yeah, pretty much.
I'm still listing them this year at GeekCon as Series 7 and Series 7 Part 1 and Part 2.
But that's only just because that's what they're actually titled as.
Yep. But yeah, this was the year that the BBC had purchased it, but they hadn't signed on to be a co-ownership yet. So the budget was still very, very tight, so they didn't have the budget for all the costumes they wanted. This budget followed even into Series 6, where the Doctor's wife was supposed to get a new alien, and they had to use an Ood instead. But I think they've been getting better at that.
Kind of explains the really awkward Ood appearance when it had nothing to do with the plot.
Yeah. It was supposed to be a completely different alien, according to...
Granted, if I had to pick a pre-existing alien to give to Neil Gaiman, Ood is probably the one I would choose.
I would love to see...
Still didn't make a lot of sense.
I would love to basically hand the Ood to Neil Gaiman and go, here, make a Doctor Who episode about these.
Here's what we know about them so far. Go crazy.
Yes.
Right.
And I would pay for... If I had money, I'd pay for this episode first.
Yeah, I hear you.
First of all, any episode by Neil Gaiman, plus. I swear I need to get this guy to GeekCon just so I can give him a hug and say thank you. Thank you for letting me endure this crap Moffat had hurled at us for the last 3 years by at least giving me your episodes.
You would have to share hugs with me on him on that one, dude. Because, yeah, these last 2 years, oh my word.
And
Season 6 almost made me quit Doctor Who, to be honest, because again, I have not seen the second half of that season. I don't care to.
Well, my problem...
You missed some of the first half, too, it seems, based on our discussion earlier on.
Only tidbits, and I've caught up a little bit.
But, no, my big problem, like I said, is River's song, and it's not just Hello, Sweetie. There's a scene in The Big Bang where she faces off with a Dalek.
Yeah, you saw how I glossed over that in the summary. I think I like my version better.
I saw you purposely glancing over that and just going, oh, wait till it comes back.
And by the end of it, by simply stating her name, she has the Dalek begging for mercy, not once, but 3 times.
Yes, this is a picture
This is
of
the
her
point
comparing
where
to
River Song evolved from Mary Sue to Super Sue.
Which is ironic because the best river that I've ever seen prior to this point is in the first part of this two-parter, when we actually see a river who is actually faced with something she doesn't understand and doesn't automatically know everything about.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first time she's an actual character to me and not just a plot device for stringing things along.
She's scared because, what's going on?
And it's in a situation that anyone would be.
And she waffles back and forth, actually, in these episodes, because we meet her. Of course, she's just put in 50-foot letters on there. She's God Mode. She's Mary Sue River.
And
then
she
the stuff
just was a large part of walking us through essentially a clip show of the season.
Mm-hmm. And she's usually, my problem is she's usually very smug about it too.
Oh yeah, She is extremely smug about every time that she gets one over on anybody.
Makes me hate her.
Which that's a large part of how Moffat writes women, because that's the exact same problem we had with, at least that I had, with the little girl in... Actually, no, that was a Gaiman episode. So it just seems to be this era of the show. That's how all the women are written.
But I give Gaiman a pass on that one.
Because that was actually a little girl, and she probably doesn't know better.
And she wasn't just a little girl. She was a little girl of that particular age.
Yeah.
That little age, and it wouldn't matter if it was a girl or a boy at that age. It's that age where you think you know everything.
Mm-hmm. Whereas River,
I would have not Army of Ghosts, Unquiet Dead moment when I see him. It's like, and what's with being the little girl being right even at the very end? What was up with that, Neil? It's like in Unquiet Dead, where the Ninth Doctor's fanboying on Charles Dickens and just mentions, what's that bit with the lighthouse or something? That was crap, that bit. And he's like, I thought you were a fan. Hey, if you can't take criticism. That would be my Neil Gaiman moment. I would be fanboying on the episodes, and then I'd bring up the girl. It's like, what's with that? Can't take a little constructive criticism, Neely boy.
But hey, overall,
and
that episode,
I'm no longer allowed back at the convention, ever.
Well, he probably would be running away from us, afraid, because there's probably so many Foamy at the Mouth fanboys there as soon as they found out that he was at our convention. But that's another story.
But, no, I mean, she faces down a Dalek who is supposed to be largely unemotional except for hate, who is unable to understand the concepts of pity or mercy.
They cannot. Well, the thing is, they've generally been able to understand the concept well enough to get a reaction out of somebody else, but this was above and beyond that.
Yes, this was the Dalek quaking in fear at the very name of River Song.
Which
and
is
going
rubbish.
Mercy. It's basically assumed at that point that the Dalek fears River Song more than it fears the Doctor. And it has never been played like that in Doctor Who before or after.
And I read this a little bit differently, to the point where I don't hate the scene as much, although I do see where you're coming from. And it's basically, he's like, oh shit, anybody else would kill me. But wait, you're with the Doctor, so you'll show mercy. And she's like, check your facts again. And he's like, you're going to show mercy, right? And that's kind of how I see it, but it's still not great. But I just don't see it quite as bad as you do.
If the Dalek had been a humanoid creature, he would have been on his knees begging. And that's what's wrong, because it's a Dalek. And it's never supposed to be like that. First of all, in the amount of time that it took for them to have that conversation, a Dalek would have actually blasted River Song dead.
I think he was still charging.
Yeah, I think he might have ran out of ammo. I mean, I know his shot to the Doctor didn't kill him, so he clearly wasn't at full power.
Yeah, I think he already blew quote unquote his
then it
load.
would have gone off on a death rant, or if everything was truly lost, self-destructed.
Which again, I would think he would need to check for that too.
No, self-destruction should not be based off power supply.
Well, normally Daleks don't have a problem with the power supply either, so...
Yeah, well, it was doing so this time. I wouldn't think, though, that the ability to self-destruct or at least self-terminate.
Yeah, because that's usually just an explosive inside. If they can talk, they should be able to activate that.
Yeah. It was obviously able to move, obviously able to talk. It should have been able to activate the bomb. So it makes no sense, especially when we go 2 seasons later and we see that's exactly what they do in Asylum of the Daleks, which is another crappy episode, but we've already reviewed that.
Thank you, Moffat.
That's a big chunk of my problem with the episode.
Now, while we're talking about that...
Other than River, the first episode, I don't have a lot of issues with.
Yeah. In fact, I quite liked it. There's even a good speech moment for Matt
There's an
Smith.
epic speech moment for the Doctor, and I mentioned this prior to the podcast. If you had just watched the Pandorica Opens by itself, taken out the to-be-continued credits, and never made any more Doctor Who after that, you would actually beat out Blake 7 for most depressing series ender ever.
And it could have actually stayed there.
It would certainly make Empire Strikes Back look like, a happy fun time by comparison.
Okay, Blake 7. I've mentioned Blake 7 on the show before, haven't I?
Yes.
I believe you have, but you might want to give a brief rundown.
Okay, Blake 7 is sci-fi, British sci-fi in the 80s, done by Terry Nation, the guy who invented the Daleks.
And Davros.
It ran for 4 series, I think, from 79 through 82 or 83. I could be wrong by the years here, but it was late 70s, early 80s.
Something like that, yes.
And the whole premise of this was the fact that Blake and his 6 other companions basically were doing a 7-man rebellion against this corrupt federation, led by this royally evil, twisted bitch called Servalan. At the very last episode, halfway through the series actually, Blake disappears because the actor didn't want to do the show anymore. So one of the secondary characters, Avon, becomes the main character. They get a couple other they get people to replace anyone else that left, so that they were once again 7 people. And the whole thing became kind of the quest to find Blake while fighting the Federation. The very last episode, they find Blake. And Avon winds up killing him because they think that he's betrayed him to the Federation. Turns out that it was Blake's second in command. And basically the last 2-3 minutes of the series is Federation stormtroopers barging into the place, and basically one of the crew would take down a stormtrooper, and then another stormtrooper would gun down that member of the crew. So that basically you're just sitting there with Avon standing above the dead body of Blake, an entire ring of 50 to 60, maybe even 100 soldiers around him, all pointing guns at him. And he looks up at the camera, raises his gun, smiles, and it cuts to the credits. Meanwhile, you just hear laser blasts going all over the place. And that is how they ended the series. It is probably, you're just sitting here going, oh my God, that sucks. The bad guys won. Then you go to this, and if you watch this episode by itself and never knew they made any others, you've got Rory standing over the dead body or cradling the dead body of Amy, who he just shot, while
seconds after she remembered who he was.
Yes.
Yes.
Because, yes, this was Rory. He was supposed to be dead. He vanished fighting the Silurians and was lost in a crack of time and thus never had existed. And now she remembered him, and he was back. And because he was also a Auton replicant, he shot her dead. Not that he wanted to, he had no control. Meanwhile, at the same time, River's in a TARDIS that's about to blow up, and when it blows up, it's going to basically blow a hole in the universe that will destroy it. Actually, it'll destroy every universe, I think they said, so it would shut down the whole of creation. That's bad.
That's bad, okay?
The only person that could do anything about it is the Doctor,
And
who
his
is currently
enemies have
being
finally
sealed
got
into the
smart.
Pandorica by a collection of his bad guys who think that by doing this, they'll keep the universe safe.
Which is probably the first altruistic thing about half of them have ever done.
Who said it's altruistic? It's sheer self-preservation.
Still. And it's also the first smart
Yes,
thing they've
but-
ever tried pulling off against the Doctor. Otherwise, it's the usual same old,
Should,
same
should
old.
I say the first thing that helps somebody other than themselves?
Yeah, but
It does.
it's still helping
It
themselves
does help
too.
themselves, but it does happen to accidentally help others as well. So it's
And I might further add that Cybermen and Daleks were in the same room and they weren't killing each other this time.
Mm-hmm. A lot of races were there and they weren't killing each other. But the fact is that what they were doing was a mistake because they were basically guaranteeing that the universe would be destroyed, though they didn't know it. Now, if you had done that,
Also-
it ended with all the planets going out, so you just saw the planet fade out to end credits, and you watched this, that would be, go slit your wrists afterwards, because that would be the most depressing thing ever.
imagine if Doctor Who was like canceled at that point and just never aired the second part of the two-parter.
We used to, Matt and I used to be part of University of Wisconsin's anime club. And while the university wasn't in session over the summer, we would have summer events once a month.
Mm-hmm.
One of which is the Craptacular, and that's not important right now, but I think usually the month afterwards, we would try to do, at least a couple of years, we tried to do what we refer to as Suicide Saturday and Saccharine Sunday. But Suicide Saturday was always the most depressing series and stuff we could think of. And this would be an ending worthy of a Suicide Saturday. Wouldn't you think, Matt?
Just about, yeah.
And by itself, this would have been a masterpiece. And then the next episode happens, and pretty much confused on that episode from the beginning. I mean, it immediately starts up with, the whole young Amy thing, but then you get into the Doctor crossing his own timeline repeatedly.
Which he
And
constantly said
I
he
would
should
like
never
to
do.
notice that this is also, I think, the first time that Moffat is not true to his own continuity within his own episode.
Oh.
5 minutes, or 5 to 10 minutes into the episode, Rory lets the Doctor out of the Pandorica. He proceeds to go out, and to show what's going on, Rory holds up his screwdriver, the Doctor holds up his screwdriver, they touch together, there's a spark, which is temporal energy from two beings within their own timeline touching.
Are you going to say about the two Doctors touching each other?
No, the two Amy's.
The two Amy's, yeah, that should
Do
have
they-
been a heck of
do
a
they-
5 minutes later,
They do touch.
yes, older Amy
yeah.
is playing with younger Amy's hair. There's no spark, no nothing.
Oh yeah, like she touches it in order to measure what year it is and whatever.
Yeah. So,
I
Moffat-
imagine they didn't want sparks around the young child, but still.
but still, yeah, it's something that should have happened.
I wonder, it's too bad there wasn't a
But the
script
two
editor that
doctors
could have looked at
touching each other
this.
should have had a spark. But Moffat
Oh, that's
doesn't-
it. I think there's precedent between the Doctor coming into contact with himself without any
not
sort
within
of...
his own regeneration cycle. There's precedent for previous doctors
Didn't
talking to
when
later
three and
doctors.
three met when three met himself, he didn't touch.
Nope. When 3 met himself, that was just almost an echo moment where they looked at each other across the console, said a couple of things, and then vanished. They never touched. For one, because the BBC at the time would have actually had no proper budget to make that happen.
Well, yeah, all you had to do is do a fade effect, and then he forgets what happened.
No, I mean actually having the two physically touch.
Oh, in terms of the SFX that be required without using a bot.
The only way they had to do it at the time, and I don't even know if that episode predated blue screening. BBC didn't get blue screen until 1 or 2 seasons later.
I'm also counting, I forget the name of the effect. Any film students listening would know what I'm talking about. But, for example, what they used in The Birds, or what they used in, hell, even as early as 1929, where they would essentially project an image onto a miniature or whatnot. I consider that a form of green screening, just nowhere near as advanced and much more difficult to pull off.
Miniatures, essentially, with screen.
Yeah, but
projection.
I mean, the proper blue screening, the video overlay,
right?
They didn't get until mid Third Doctor, and the Doctor talking to himself was early Third Doctor. But no, they never really did something like that. I mean, I remember they had to do something along the lines when the second Doctor met what was it? Salamander, I think, was the...
oh, yeah, Salamander. Yeah.
Yeah. But, that episode doesn't really exist anymore.
Even Doctor Who, even Star Trek in the 60s had scenes where William Shatner was standing next to himself.
Yeah, but they actually had the blue screen technology at that point.
Blue screen and or split screens, either way.
Yeah, they had blue screen or the equivalent there. The BBC was simply 5 or more years behind American television productions at the time, because you notice that Star Trek had already gone into color, and it was another about 3-4 years afterwards before the BBC did. So it was the fact that the BBC didn't get as much of a budget. Remember, BBC's budget is about the equivalent of like PBS budget.
Right.
Only instead of having, they only have the Isle of Britain and North Ireland to draw from.
Or at least they used to.
Yeah, I was aware of the budget difference. I just wasn't quite sure about the tech equivalent.
Yeah, the tech-wise, BBC until lately has kind of been about 5 to 10 years behind.
Yes. It's always been that way. You look at, like, the Tom Baker era. You look at the Tom Baker era and what they're using for models and effects. And then you take a look at Star Trek done 10 years previously, and you'll notice that the Enterprise models are 1,000 times better than the ones being used by the BBC.
And then you look at, for example, season 26 compared to the early seasons of The Next Generation. It's not exactly the same time, but
it is the exact same time. It is exactly the same time.
I thought Next Gen started in the 90s.
What's that?
Okay, I thought it was like I thought it was starting in like 92 or something.
1986.
Okay.
So
it went until the 90s.
So season 1 roughly translates to the first season of Sylvester McCoy. And you look at the cheesy effects that they have in Sylvester McCoy and the not quite as cheesy effects that they have in the first season of Star Trek The Next Generation. Even better yet, look at the final season of Doctor Who Classic versus the third season of Star Trek The Next Generation. And
yeah, it would be hard to tell if they were made at the same time in the same genre.
Correct.
Whereas nowadays we're kind of spoiled by modern Who.
By these days, most modern science fiction has been spoiled. To be honest, what spoiled modern science fiction for this kind of thing was Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
Tom Baker
the
moment he saw Star Wars, he knew that the revolution was too late. Because before that, he and who was it? Ian Marter, the guy that played his other companion in the first Harry Sullivan. because he stuck around even after he had left the show proper as an actor, and he and Tom Baker were working on a Doctor Who movie that they were going to do. I believe it was tentatively titled Doctor Who Meets Scratch Man. Mr. Scratch is a old name for the devil, by the way. And this was something that they had been working on, and it was going to star Tom Baker and all this. And then they went to see this new science fiction show from America, or the new science fiction movie from America called Star Wars. And when they came out of that movie, they went home, they took their script for Doctor Who Meets Scratch Man, and they threw it in the bin. Because at that point they knew they would never be able to make it with a low-budget movie, and they would never get approved for a high-budget movie. So all it was a pipe dream.
And there wasn't Kickstarter at that time.
Yeah.
There wasn't Kickstarter. There wasn't as much independent money floating around for the movies as there seems to be these days.
And there's another thing that made a huge difference in sci-fi.
That Riddick is coming out next month, right?
That what is?
Riddick, the third Chronicles of Riddick movie. Started with Pitch Black, Chronicles of Riddick, and now Riddick.
Yeah, Riddick
Yes,
looks
I was
like
aware of that.
repeat of the first movie, to be honest.
It is kind of, but what's going on with it is the fact that it's also completely independently produced. So while it's not going to have the huge budget of the second movie, it'll be a lot closer to the first movie in style, and it's not going to have the money the Avengers or anything like that.
Yeah.
Another thing that made a huge difference in the production of sci-fi was that what is now done in front of a green screen and looks massive and awesome back in those days would have been filmed in a rock quarry.
Yes.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10.
Yeah, that's a lot of statements about Doctor Who, and really even Star Trek, if you look at the original series, is a lot of alien planets looked remarkably like rock quarriers. A lot of them. I mean,
Yeah.
heck, if you watch one of the most classic Star Treks of all time, Arena,
Rock quarry. It doesn't. But
the entire thing is filmed in a rock quarry, and it's so obviously a rock quarry. You can look at you could freeze certain frames, and you see rock formations that's known for this famous rock quarry outside of Los Angeles.
Well, even look at low budget sci-fi in the 90s, and you see Angel Grove must have had dozens of rock quarries.
It was filmed in the same damn rock quarry.
50% of it, yes. The other 50% was actually shot in Japan.
Right.
Rock
In
quarries.
rock quarries. You can't tell a Japanese rock quarry from an American one.
Actually, yeah, 50-50.
Well, no, the action scenes that were done with the actual actors for Power Rangers
Yeah, the actual parts where they were not in the suits
was
yet
filmed
was
domestically,
domestic,
and
yeah.
a few of the suit scenes were filmed.
That would have been
domestic.
later seasons.
Yeah, that would have been when they started doing the suits without the helmets on occasion.
Yeah, and there were
That
a few moments where their rewrites involved scenes that didn't actually have footage for it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And you can actually tell the graphical difference there.
Yes, you can.
But yeah, really, Saban tried to get with a minimum, the absolute minimum they could get by of new footage for when they did Power Rangers. But yeah. So and you look at even most of the other scenes. A lot of Voyager was filmed in quarries. Not as much DS9, but there was the occasional episode.
Yeah,
A lot of
DS9 was
DS9
largely in a single setting, so it was largely using sets.
Once they got to Defiant, they were able to go to different planets, and every now and then there was the occasional runabout episode. There was, I think, this episode where Odo and Quark were lost on this planet with minimum survivability, and that was actually filmed in a national park. I think possibly the same national park that Star Trek V was filmed, but don't quote me on that.
Also, since we have done another Power Rangers reference, I might as well do this before I don't find a shot later on. Alpha, the TARDIS is going to destroy the universe. We need to find 5 Daleks with attitude.
We have returned.
We need Dalek Zord power now. God, I hate that Dalek design. I, honest to God, hate that Dalek design.
It's not the design. I still don't think it's the design so much as...
The same colors.
Well, yeah, it's not the design just so much as the way that they're always portrayed as, the 5-man team, the 3-man team of multi. If they had done it, yeah, if they had done it as
5-man band, look it up.
No, well, yeah, but it wasn't always 5. Like in this episode, it was 3 at least in the main shot.
And not all Power Rangers had up to 5 members either.
Like if they had one Supreme and multiple drones and multiple soldiers, it could have been pulled off.
Yeah.
But they only had five Daleks, so they really couldn't do what they were made to do, and the script should have accommodated that.
If not the script, then they should at least have recolored some of those dogs to just be...
Or as, I forget if you mentioned this.
This is why Moffat has gone back to the gold Daleks.
Right. I forget if you mentioned this on... I think you mentioned this on air last week.
He just goes back to the old stuff, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I am pretty sure I brought it up last week.
Yeah, that they should have just sent it to the mill and been like, all right, we need some drones milling about.
Yeah. But I will continue to bring this up because it's a constant pain in my side.
Well, it's constant only for 2 episodes, so it's kind of forgivable in that sense that we never have to see it again.
But no, I mean it comes back every time we see new Daleks.
Yeah, but at least now they're like...
We're having Daleks coming up for the 50th anniversary. Wow, I went back in time 25 years. Show about time travel. You can do that. Anyway, for the 50th anniversary, yes, once again, we have Daleks. So, is it going to be an issue?
How they do with the dogs this time.
Hey, 25th anniversary, we had good Daleks and bad Cybermen, so we'll see what the 50th has.
Well, we already have some really good Cybermen, so as long as they keep that up.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll use the Nightmare and Silver suits.
Those, yeah, but will they be as badass as they were the next time we see them? If Neil Gaiman isn't writing them, are they going to be that badass, or are they going to be the cyber joke? Because
at least they shouldn't be as much of a joke as they were in Doomsday.
I liked the Cybermen in Doomsday.
I did too, but when they fought the Daleks, yeah,
when superior technology.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. When they fought the Daleks, they came off as a joke because one Dalek could exterminate 1,000 Cybermen without breaking a sweat. And that is because they were special, superior Daleks, but...
And that wasn't because they're special, superior Daleks. Was because...
Well, they were Time War Daleks. They were limited edition.
They were still relatively primitive because all they had was a laser and shock arms. And the Daleks had frickin' force shields.
Right. Well, yeah, these were also the most technologically sophisticated Daleks we've seen before or since. Since that episode, we haven't really gotten Daleks that were quite as powerful because they were no longer Time War Daleks.
Yeah.
Even if you listen to River's song rant in this episode, she mentions that it would take X amount of time for their force shield to do this. So they still have their shields. To be honest, I like the Daleks when they're scary and menacing, and I want to go hide behind the sofa. That's what makes a good Dalek story, is when you're actually afraid of them. I mean, not on a level of this is where you believe they're going to come out to the TV and kill you, but when you're wrapped up in the story, and you see the Daleks menacing people, and you're actually you get your pulse pounding like any good horror movie should.
Right.
I have to say this because, of course, I'm used to arguing against Flynn.
I would definitely say this
to be of the opinion that if you actually get wrapped up in a story, you're losing your grip on reality.
And I would definitely say that the 2005 and 2006 Daleks were some of the best we've ever had, if not the best.
It's the best we've had since the 60s.
Yes.
And even in the 60s, a lot of the time they were played as a farce more than an actual death
No,
machine.
I'm thinking like Dalek Invasion of Earth 60s.
Right. Well, that's the thing. Dalek Invasion of Earth was 50-50 because you also had who was it? Was it Barbara doing her imitation of a Dalek by waving her hand over her mouth, and the Doctor yelling into a speaker so that the Robomen would pick up a Dalek and make it crowd surf and
You
stuff.
got to admit, though, that the Doctor's imitation was a lot better than Barbara's.
Yeah.
The Doctor managed to do that upper range Dalek leader voice, the high one that sounds like this.
I was thinking the Doctor was just ignoring the imitation idea and was just yelling into the speaker, but yeah.
No, he was doing the imitation of the higher pitched Dalek voice, and he had he had that same cadence.
Right.
He just stopped with doing this, which was what Barbara was doing.
Yeah.
Really, the best way to do a homemade Dalek imitation, to my opinion, is take any fan, set it on low, and talk into it. It's not perfect, but it's better than what you can do.
What he basically did was a drill sergeant voice, which is what he'd been doing on television for years, so it really fit him.
He was doing it in a different octave than it was. He was actually trying to hit that same octave as the Dalek Supreme sounded. And it wasn't the military cadence. It was that rapid cadence that the that Dalek leader tended to do. Do yourself a favor, Bill. When you got time this week, go find a copy of that episode. Just play the clips that have that high-pitched Dalek voice, and then play Hartnell's bit into the microphone, and you'll see what I mean. He gets the proper tone and meter.
Okay. And we have strayed a bit off of Pandorica and Big Bang
for once, which is good.
Yeah, we've come full circle back to Doctor Who.
Yeah, we've come full circle.
We went quite a distance away, but looped back.
Well, we were talking about graphics. We got on the topic of other science fiction shows of the era, which then you got to the topic of Daleks, which brought us to Power Rangers, and then back to Daleks. But no, I think you were talking about the 3 Daleks that showed up in the Pandorica scene where they're sealing the Doctor into the cube.
Red, white, and the yellow, I believe.
Which would be the Supreme, the Eternal, and the Drone, which is an odd combination if you're actually trying to sell them as such. But they didn't have enough Daleks to actually sell them as anything.
Yeah.
I'm surprised they didn't throw in the other 2 Daleks because they had the suits, I mean, at least they kept some of the less reputable.
So that would have just increased the accusations of the Sentai team.
The Go-Go Dalek Rangers, yeah. But they were throwing just about everything else out of the woodwork in there.
I will bomb the head.
They had the freaking androids from the Runaway Bride in there.
By the way, this is the last proper Centauran appearance that we've had actually at all on the show so far, or since then. And they actually
Strax.
Right, that's not a proper Centauran appearance. That's one Centauran comedian.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas here, since the Centauran is the closest thing to a human that they have, he actually kind of comes off as being the leader in that he's the most relatable speaker, so he gets some of the best lines relating to that.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, with the whole, no, we're not here to ask you for help. We're here to save it from you. We're being the heroes this time.
Mm-hmm. Although, really, if you think about it, it's not really a Centauran mentality to do something like this. I mean, the Centaurans have been engaged for thousands of years in this war with the Rutans over 2 sections of the arm of the galaxy we live in. We know this because Earth is a strategic point between the 2, apparently.
And frequently mentioned, yes.
Earth is a strategic point between everything in sci-fi.
Apparently, yeah. We're ground zero for everything. But they've been fighting on this
multiverses.
to the point that they're focused on nothing else but finding a way to win this war. I'm surprised they would take time from the war to do this, even with the cracks in the universe.
I guess they figured that if the universe is destroyed, the Rutans win.
That could be a mentality to add to it, but also I would add there's only 3 guys, so I would assume at best it's only 1 B squad or something that they sent in there.
Maybe.
What, for the Daleks or the Centaurans?
Centaurans.
Oh, there's something else we haven't mentioned either. The Stephen Moffat Cyberman. The big tentacled cyber skull.
Cyberman, yeah.
Which at the same time...
By the way, I didn't realize this at first. Apparently the assimilated line is actually a 10th Planet reference and not a Borg ripoff. I did not realize this the first time I saw it.
I actually knew that. I actually knew that, yes. I will mention this. For the record, the Cybermen said it first.
Yes, again, the Borg have always been a slight knockoff of the idea behind Cybermen, and they use some of the same lingo.
Mm-hmm. Actually, I don't think it's a 10th Planet as much as it is a Tube of the Cybermen reference. But I don't know where they first came up. I know they've said assimilate before. I just don't remember them saying it in 10th Planet, but I could be wrong. I will admit this. But yes, there's a reason I keep mentioning the Cybermen, or the Borg as being a rip-off idea from the Cybermen with other parts added.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they took the Cybermen and added a bit of an insect hive mentality and made the Borg. And that is because they have lines like, you will be assimilated, you will be like us, which are big Cybermen lines in the 60s and 70s. They are partially bionic, partially flesh, as is the Cybermen. There's several similarities to the point that if it was just 1 or 2 similarities, you could write it off, but there's too many.
Right. And then, of course, Doctor Who is bringing it back to the point where the few differences that they had are starting to be borrowed for the sake of making the Cybermen scary again.
Correct. Now, as I was saying, though, you take this in a grain of salt, and then you also realize that you look at some of the little pictures that were part of the scene buildup for, the Enterprise D. And on one of the cutout displays, the cross sections of the Enterprise, in one of the rooms there's a TARDIS, which meant that at least one, if not more, of the production staff were Doctor Who fans. When you take that in mind, the Borg's similarity to the Cybermen becomes more and more suspicious.
Right. Well, I'll maintain that the Borg have this scarier design, but that's, at this point, probably the one thing that they have up on the Cybermen.
Yeah, and the fact that they
the fact that their technology is almost as though they were Cybermen from the distant future who came back in time, because they do have that capability.
Actually, the Borg have always looked like they were partially cyberized Cybermen.
Yeah, I wouldn't exactly call them more advanced.
I'm looking at like the cube ships, the hyper, their hyper technology, their ability to just travel back in time at will.
Okay, I was just looking at the sheer costume.
Yeah, that's what I was comparing to. Is like Cybermen are a bit bulkier, more.
I like the Cybermen look better, to be honest, because they look more menacing than basically a pale guy with bits attached to his body. I mean, really, the Borg look like a grafting experiment gone wrong.
To a degree, yes.
The Cybermen do look like giant robots, but the fact that that there is the remains of a person in there makes them more frightening, in my opinion. because you don't see it, but you know it.
Mm.
The Borg technology and adaptability makes them more scary on the battlefield. Their ability to pull up force fields and everything.
Right.
And
which now is a Cyberman feature as of 2013.
Yes. They've become even more like the Borg, and I don't know whether to blame or thank Neil Gaiman for that.
Right.
I would thank him, actually, because, yay, the Cybermen are a threat again.
Of course, I guess the idea is that we're not going to be...
1960s.
I guess the idea is that we're not going to be seeing Borg for another 10 years, and we haven't seen them in almost 10 years. So, no, over 10 years. Yeah, their last
I don't know.
movie
I fight Borg just about every time I log into STO, so...
I wasn't aware of how popular that is or is not.
It's a fairly popular MMO, but yeah, the Borg are a big portion of that.
Yeah,
so
that is true. You constantly fight Borg, especially at the beginning of that thing.
I guess the next time we'll really get a new
TV shows and movies. Yeah, we're not going to see them for a while.
Right.
Thanks
we're
to the
probably going to see them. We're probably going to see them before the next Picard era, because I just don't get the impression that Paramount is going to keep something like the Borg away for that long.
Yeah, I'm sure they're already going itchy trigger fingers on it. Should we now? Maybe now? Maybe no. No, not yet.
No, they're still going through original series stuff, and they've got plenty of original series stuff. I'm really hoping that the next Star Trek movie deals with the Romulans.
Although this is an interesting tack, and I kind of hope they don't take it, and I kind of don't expect them to. Mm-hmm. But if V'ger shows up with a contingent of Borg on it, that would be an interesting approach.
That is what the fans have been screaming for years.
And that is actually what STO speculates.
Yep.
You fight a Borg command ship in there, and one of the weapons it has is that big energy disintegrator that V'ger used. It's slightly frightening, but anyway, we're not talking about Star Trek.
Right.
We're talking about Doctor Who.
As for more about Pandorica Opens itself, I feel like this is less of a complaint after watching it again. It's also because I watched it in a different light, as I kind of described earlier. My major problem with this episode in the past was the way that things that shouldn't have had, that should not have been fighting against the Doctor at this point were, and the Silurians are still a problem. What are they called again? The rhinos.
Jadoon.
The Jadoon, yeah.
The Jadoon from the moon.
The Jadoon are less of an issue because there's no explicit link, unless I'm mistaken, to the Shadow Proclamation this time, so they could have been hired by the Alliance.
They didn't even speak.
Yeah, so they just
showed up and growled.
Right, so they could have been hired by the Centaurans. Well, the Centaurans probably wouldn't do that, but they could have been hired by another member species of the Alliance.
Jadoon are your low-budget Centaurans. I mean, you look at them, space armor, the helmets.
But that's the thing. Centaurans would see them that way, so a Centauran clearly would not hire a Jadoon, but other members of that are not as military might have done so.
Yeah, apparently there were other forces that chose representatives, the Jadoon being one of them, the androids from the Runaway Bride being another. Mm-hmm. Because the androids themselves would have no beef against the Doctor, because they're fucking androids.
And the Weevils, nobody's managed to communicate with them, so I imagine they're a slave race to somebody.
There was a Weevil in there?
There's two of
them.
Yes,
there were.
What the hell was a Weevil doing in there?
There was two of them.
They had the costume. They had the costume, and it looked scary.
So all we can assume is the fact that that the Cardiff Rift must have dropped a couple of them there.
That's an option.
We also have the one monster that growled at the camera from Love and Monsters.
Oh, I knew that was familiar. I thought it was like a bigger Weevil, but
no,
that's where I recognize the problem. No, okay. Because I was staring at it on screen, and I'm like, I don't think it's a Weevil, but what the hell else could it be?
And also in the background, we have one of the aliens from the first Christmas special.
The Sycorax.
Sycorax, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I remember.
So that might be who is controlling the androids.
Maybe. We never really said who's controlling the androids.
No, we just know they're there. Because we know the Rachnos wasn't there, because there are no Rachnos left.
When I saw the androids, I thought they were the adherents of the repeated meme, but Randy managed to point out that not necessarily.
No, they could be. We never saw the faces of the adherents of the repeated meme, and the adherents of the repeated meme were simply androids controlled by Cassandra.Delta 17. So as far as we know, he could have bought the same damn model and just put their hoods down deeper.
Right.
Just repainted.
But they're not necessarily controlled by her as I kind of thought at first when I watched it.
No, you'd think that Cassandra would have the genius to custom build those. No, she ordered those.
Furthermore, she would have to travel in time in order to end up here too.
So no, she got those out of the year 4 billion's version of the Sharper Image catalog.
At least
you
the face of Bo didn't
your
show
own
up.
androids. Just 4 payments of $99.99.
So what did you guys think of the last half hour with the actual Big Bang 2 and everything else?
Last half hour?
It's sad. There was one particular scene that annoyed the crap out of me. And it was when the Doctor starts reliving the past, and it's like, this was from a week ago, when we were going to Space Florida. And I paused, and I said, Space Florida? Really? While going to Space Florida, be sure to visit Space Orlando, and make sure you go to Space Disney World.
What's Space NASA like?
Yeah, exactly.
And don't forget to visit Space Australia!
We get it! You're from space! I actually said that aloud during the scene.
I can see it.
No, it wasn't just they were going to Florida. It had to be Space Florida. It wasn't New Florida. It wasn't Florida 2. It was fucking Space Florida.
It wasn't Miami. No, the planet. It was just Space Florida.
Yes.
I guess they have space ducks too.
And this is one of the reasons I miss RTD. Because RTD wouldn't have let that go as Space Florida.
Yeah, he'd have to come up with something.
At the very least, it would have been Miami the planet, which he did
with Orlando or Tampa World or something.
Where did he do that with before?
What's that?
He did that with
New Earth, Barcelona, the planet.
Barcelona, that's what I was thinking of.
Barcelona.
But the dogs have their noses.
Yes. But
apparently that makes for endless jokes.
Apparently, but at least he did it so that it was more than Space Florida. I heard that. I mean, that's a running joke in DBZ Abridged, which was what Matt and I were doing right there. We get it. You're from space. There's a character in the second season of that, Jace of the Ginyu Force, who's from Space Australia. And you got to be careful when you go out into the space outback, because space dingoes will eat your space baby. And that's what this felt like.
I have to say about that same montage, another thing threw me off, and he's basically like, the cracks won't close unless I go back. Why is the death of the universe waiting for you to go back through the door before continuing? I never got that.
No, I understood that one. That was to balance it out. He's still there, it can't fix the equation. There's an imbalance.
But it was the Pandorica and the TARDIS doing it. It had nothing to do with him. He was just along for the ride.
No, literally he should have been sucked through. Like Doomsday.
Yeah, that might have made sense. Because then it would have been, a whole event occurring rather than it's waiting for him.
But no, he had to be there so the Doctor could sit there by young Amy and give her the whole something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue.
And then have his little heartfelt going away instead
and
of being sucked away like he should have been.
if he could have just done that and planted it into Amy's subconscious while they were saying goodbye before the Pandorica took off,
that could work too.
we
Yeah.
could have saved 10 minutes of fucking time here.
Which is what he kind of did, because he had that speech about her memories, and
Mhm.
if you remember them, you can bring them back
could have
because
pretty
you're
much just
special.
pulled Mr. Spock remember there, and I would have been fine with it.
Right.
But still, you drag this out, and then there's this wonderful part right there. It's like, I think I'll skip the rest of it. I hate reruns.
Yeah.
Which was basically Stephen
what?
of raising the middle finger at RTD.
No, speaking of reruns, the beginning of the second episode here, we took the last scene with River from the first episode and just played it 5 times.
Yes.
I mean, I understand it was a time loop, but after the third iteration, we kind of get what loop means. We don't need to just keep seeing the same scene over and over to pad out the episode.
But at the same time, and you haven't seen this episode, so I will bring it up, it's reminiscent of a bit from the Armageddon Factor.
Oh yeah, I think I know what you're speaking of. Yes.
There's a bit in the Armageddon Factor where they use the key to time with a temporary cobbled together 6th piece to throw a time loop about the Marshal, kind of the not quite the sub boss, if you will, who's about to fire a whole bunch of missiles on the planet the Doctor and Romana's on. And as we go through this, you repeatedly see this over the thing where he goes fire and somebody presses the buttons. But at least there, as the episodes that's happening and goes on, the loop begins to stretch and you see a little more of the scene before it winks back to the other scene. Stressing on how perilous the situation is.
So it changed a little bit each time, kind of like the Legopolis loop scene. There was a little bit of difference between walking. It got darker and such. Walking through the TARDIS to the TARDIS to the TARDIS to the TARDIS.
Yes.
Is a little bit different, rather than just the same repeated.
Well, the first time you see it, it's repeating the same. But as it comes back to it, you'll notice the loop stretching. At the same time, they threw the time loop also on the Xeon control room, which I think was having a countdown to self-destruct. And you would see it 10, 9, loop 10, 9, loop 10, 9, 8, loop,
Right.
It would just get that little bit further before the loop each time.
Right, and this doesn't do that. It's literally she gets to the door, and then
it's the same scene over and over and over again.
I did notice after about the third time they did start to finally shorten it.
It was still a little unnecessary.
It was very unnecessary.
It was like they were doing that because they needed to fill time.
Because Moffat is lazy.
And you notice, okay, what was the biggest complaint about RTD's endings in the first 4 series of Doctor Who?
That they were hand-wavy.
Hand-wavy and Deus Exi.
And?
What's this?
They tended to involve what? Not really the first one, but the third one.
Daleks.
They tended to have a reset button.
Reset buttons?
Oh,
yes.
Really?
And what is Moffat's thing is this is the universe's biggest reset button.
Yeah, I was gonna say reset. I can only reset.
At least it doesn't have big friendly button written on it.
Yes, and that was the next time we saw. That was Journey to the Center of the TARDIS with a reset button. God, I hate that episode too.
I hate flashbacks. No.
I mean, instead of saying friendly button, he could have just put reset button on there.
We will. I'm pretty sure we will be discussing that episode at least in part next week.
Oh.
Oh?
You guys remember what we were planning to discuss next?
No, but tell me after the podcast.
Yeah.
Indeed.
We never like to tell you guys what we're doing next until we get to what we're doing next.
Yeah, last time was kind of a one-off thing, and I kind of thought about it as I was saying it, but I think I had a reason to say it.
Yeah, I think I was actually trying to stop you too, actually, what you were doing last time.
But even though, yes, that scene at the end was solely unnecessary, it was also very emotional.
Yes, and that
is one thing Moffat is good at doing, is he's doing emotional moments.
Yeah, he can do the heartstring.
Which it's very interesting. RTD was good at the emotional character arcs, whereas Moffat would do the emotional character moments.
I'd agree with that. But, I mean, there's some great moments here. Pandorica Open has the Doctor's epic speech moment of badass. Yes, it doesn't work.
That was a very Eccleston scene.
I love that scene. It's a Tennant scene. It's a very RTD Doctor Who scene.
Yeah, and you once described it as a Tennant scene, and I'm looking at it like that's very Eccleston. If anything, it's kind of a new Who Doctor over the years into one kind of scene.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, the link I just sent, Randy, that's a picture of the Weevils in this episode.
And the Silurians, which I had missed.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, those are Weevils.
Yeah, the jumpsuits and everything. Which is
right
really
behind.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Because I don't think they came with those naturally.
Yeah, they kind of did.
Oh, they did?
Yeah.
I'm kind of wondering, all those Roman costumes, did the BBC have something else involving Romans going on at the time?
They probably did.
They might have a few.
Or actually, they could have. They might have used them from Pompeii.
They might have actually. They might have, but I doubt they had that many of them. They probably came somewhere out of the BBC costume vaults.
Yeah, they probably have a slew of these costumes because, again, it's Britain. They've had Romans there numerous times.
It probably came from the last time somebody did I, Claudius.
I'm sure. Okay,
or Caesar.
Yeah. Okay, there we go.
Shakespeare, The Death of Julius Caesar. Somebody might have just done a production of that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it probably involved some Doctor Who actors.
Probably.
Possibly.
Either way, it was something probably the BBC had, so it didn't cost them that money to have a crap load of Romans.
And the same with the Cleopatra costume. That was probably something.
Okay. May I add one more moment of epic bitching?
Okay.
No, Frank.
Stonehenge.
Mm-hmm.
They go to Stonehenge, and it looks exactly like Stonehenge looks today.
Yeah, that's a bit bollocks.
And they say, why does it still look run down? Because it's thousands of years old. Which is implying that in the 3,000 years since Stonehenge had been made prior to this, it got this run down and then ceased to actually wear and tear in the 2,000 years up till the present. What's wrong with this picture?
I don't know enough about Stonehenge to really
I wikied this when I heard this line. And I will quickly wiki it again, because that wiki.
All I know about Stonehenge is that the meddling monk apparently put it there.
Stonehenge. Prehistoric monument in England. It was built anywhere from 3000 BC to 2000 BC. Remember that the Pandorica Opens is taking place in 100 AD.
So it's been a couple thousand, yes.
It's been at least 2,000 years, and it would be almost another 2,000 years before present-day pictures of Stonehenge would start coming out. Radiocarbon dating in 2008 suggested the first stones were raised between 2400 and 2200 BC. So it was half its age, supposedly, at the point of this, a little bit older. And yet it looked exactly the way it looked today.
Yeah, those are some handy-dandy stones, or
which is some handy-dandy hand-waving by Moffat. You have to admit that too, don't you, Bill?
Yeah.
I will give him credit. He tried to make an aside line
Well,
for
see,
it.
here's what happened: is Stonehenge is actually able to travel back in time, and it went back from the modern day to make this production.
Well, I will give Moffat an attempt on making a hand-wavy excuse, which is more than he's been doing in the last 2 seasons. But it was a really half-hearted hand-wavy excuse, you know?
Pretty much.
I mean, I would have liked it if we saw Stonehenge with a full ring of stones, or at least only a couple of broken ones, you know?
Yeah.
Right.
And and a little more cracked, which you could have done with a little CGI work from the mill.
Yeah.
But they didn't.
Or even with creative camera angles. You know, show some more scenes of the intact ones than would otherwise be correct, and make it seem as though they're walking around in a circle or something.
Yeah, but they really didn't do it. And that's kind of annoying.
Yeah.
So I do take it that they did actually shoot this on location then.
I would have to think so.
I don't know what the regulations around Stonehenge are, if it's protected or anything, but I think they probably would have, at least parts of it.
Yeah, because I do know that some of the other outdoor shots, they obviously did shoot outside because I could see rain and drizzle and stuff. And weather in Britain.
Yeah, well, it's also...
if you watch Doctor Who Confidential, they have done scenes that they added the rain in afterward, and you can't tell by watching the episode. So that's not necessarily the giveaway.
No, it's also the fact that, this is, down on the AO3, just, halfway between there and London. Half of those people, have to make that trip anyway.
So why not?
And yeah, as far as I know, there is no actual Stonehenge preservation that would prevent filming.
So I imagine if they had gone up and chipped off a bit of rocks,
that would be
might have been a problem.
Be an issue. But the fact that these rocks are sitting out in the British weather year after year means, there's nothing a camera's going to do to them that the weather doesn't already do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, as long as they're not knocking down stones that weren't added as fake stones, they don't care.
Yeah, if they were filming an action scene that wasn't choreographed in the middle of it, someone might have stopped them.
Yeah. But no, I'm pretty sure as long as they didn't do any
damage than what naturally could happen.
Yeah, then they were fine with them shooting there. And considering it's, relatively a couple hours trip, they probably filmed it on location.
So yeah. I mentioned that the idea for the movie The Fog came out of John Carpenter visiting Stonehenge.
Oh yeah, it's supposed to usually be really, really, really foggy.
Yeah, they literally saw a fog bank slowly rolling up towards the hill.
Yep, some scenes were filmed at the real Stonehenge in Wiltshire, while others were filmed using a replica.
So I take it some of the faraway shots were probably the actual real thing then.
They only had one night, apparently, to do all the filming that they needed to do at Stonehenge. They had to follow regulations. They were not allowed to touch the stones, bring heavy equipment in, and the lighting had to be done from the floor.
Yep, so yeah, the faraway shots were apparently live scenes while the actual stuff inside the circle is probably set.
And they could only afford to shoot during the one night, which means that filming there was expensive, and the only hour of daylight in the morning shooting a 3-minute dialogue sequence.
Which could have been the beginning of the next episode.
Well, no, that whole underground thing was all,
No. The beginning of the next episode, the bit with the Doctor popping in and out and talking to Rory.
No, that was filmed probably on the replica. Because there was no real landmarks that they needed to have there.
Oh, that's true too. But I was just thinking it could have been easily filmed in the field just outside.
Yeah, the Underhenge set was built at Upper Boat Studios. So, yeah, they wanted it to look dark and physical. And they wanted it to look like similar to the Indiana Jones temple.
They actually played Indiana Jones music while they were filming in order to get the actors in the mood.
Yes, they did. I was just reading that. Let's see. Daleks, Cybermen, Sidarans, Jaloon, Auton, Sycorax, Hoiks, Silurians, and Roboforms were what was there. But yeah, we never did talk about the snap-heady Cybermen of tentacliness.
That's right. That's what you wanted to talk about, and we ended up going off on other Cybermen.
Yeah,
things.
it's almost in a way you could see where Gaiman would have gotten the new upgrades to the Cybermen from watching this. And at the same time, it is Moffat trying to be really scary with this.
Right.
I mean, you watch as the head splits open, and you see the skull on the inside, and it spits out and starts snapping at Amy. At the same time, though,
it's kind of also the Doctor Who equivalent of having an army of skeletons guarding a relic.
Yes, it is, because
it's a Cyberman without its human component.
It's not supposed to be able to do this kind of stuff, right?
Right.
Yeah, and at the same time, it's almost scary to the point of being cheesy.
Yeah.
You're getting into Evil Dead forms of cheese at that point.
Mm-hmm.
If the skull on the inside had opened its eyes and said delete, you would have hit Evil Dead. You would have actually hit Evil Dead at that point.
So with a skull inside, we're to take it that these are Mondasian Cybermen?
They never stated for the record. We were to assume they were Mondasian Cybermen, although I did catch the fact that the Cybermen mentioned the fact that the cracks were affecting all universes might meant that they were Cybusmen still.
Mm-hmm. And I couldn't tell, Matt was showing some screenshots of the Cybermen earlier, and I couldn't tell if it was the resolution or if they actually covered up the C in the Cybermen.
Can you bring up another one of those, Matt, and post it into the channel?
I'm trying to find the ones he was talking about. They're somewhere down here. Scrolling. Scroll. Here we go.
Well, no, I'm seeing some more on Google, and I'm seeing the C's are pretty clear.
I think it mostly depends on your resolution, but here's the one that I was showing the longest, I think.
The C was partially covered, but
there's another one where you can clearly see the C.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was mostly because of the age of the deterioration on the Cybermen.
The one I just linked to, you can really clearly see the C. Well, I meant more the ones that came down from the ship. But yeah, I think the one that I just linked to is the one that was guarding it, and you can clearly see the C on that.
Yeah, I wasn't too sure with the image I had found.
Yeah, I can't say for sure on this one.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to tell. I think it might have varied between scene to scene.
It might just fixed up only one of the suits too, and they just didn't really think about the other ones.
Well, no, it's supposed to be the same cyber suit. I'm just wondering if originally it had some stuff that got knocked off on it. Because,
the one you're showing on Twitch now is the one that I was not certain about.
Which one, Matt? Post it.
This one?
It was the one from right after they teleported down onto the planet.
No, because the one I was thinking of.
Here we go. Here's a close-up shot. Yeah, I can actually kind of see a little bit of deformity in there, like they might have tried to do something to fix it. But they are definitely visually trying to get rid of the C, but you can kind of tell that it used to be there.
This was the picture I was looking at.
Yeah.
Oh,
it was a
yeah.
little blurry.
The headless one.
Yep. And you really can't tell if there's a C there or not. So, no, but still, I mean, you had, the tentacliness, you had the arm moving by itself, both of which I think would be revisited later by Gaiman. But Gaiman did it more right than this.
Yeah.
This came off as a little...
Started to get a little over the top.
Yeah. With the helmet snapping like it was a pair of jaws, and
Yeah, that was probably the worst part of it.
And then
And
moved
him,
off by
hey,
itself.
Hey, look at me. I'm a target.
Yeah. I really didn't like most of that scene. It could have been done so much better, and it just wasn't.
Yeah.
It was the only part of...
I can get what he wanted, but it really came off as a time-wasting scene while we wait to figure out what's actually going on.
It was, a time-killing scene. And then
I really don't think he intended for it to be filler. I think he wanted an actual action scene where we felt everyone's life was in danger and such. It just didn't come off that way.
Okay, and then we also had, what else to talk about? Rory. We had seen him killed and erased from history by in the Silurian episodes, and he came back here. And, of course, then became the boy who waited for 2,000 years as he guarded the Pandorica until it could be opened.
Yeah, they claimed that it was taken from a snapshot of Amy's memories, but it seemed more as though they had gone into her room and taken things that she had pictures of in her room and used those. So where did this, the memory of Rory, because of the crack in time and such, actually feature into him? Like, is the Nestine psychic beyond its ability to control plastic?
No, not as far as I am aware.
Anybody in the Alliance at all remotely psychic?
Not that we've seen.
Nope. Yeah,
So that
Rory seems to be a very, very out-of-nowhere thing in this particular double feature, to be honest.
I mean, yeah, it looks like they'd gone through her room, but why would they have gone through her room?
because they knew that was the day that the TARDIS exploded and that she was his companion.
All right.
And apparently YouTube does not have the "It Just Raises Too Many Questions" clip from Batman Forever. I was about to play it.
And then, of course, you've also gotten the fact that means that effect led to cause. Which is really...
Time travel shows that's kind of a frequent thing.
No, just bear with me here. If the TARDIS exploded, ended the universe, froze everything, how would they then know to use that as a benchmark to go back or to go forward to Amy's room, rifle through it to set all this stuff up to cause it all happening in the first place? There's a causality error there. I can see it.
Where did River get the coordinates that said when and where to go, or did the TARDIS do that?
No, it was on Van Gogh's painting. It was in the place of the police public call box free for use of public sign.
Gotcha.
And, which reminds me, are we supposed to now glean the fact that Vincent painted this because he had a vision, and that's what actually drove him to kill himself?
We might be expected to believe that. I mean, I don't know because, you haven't saw... Doctor Who does... clearly, who wrote the Vincent episode?
That was not Moffat, and I will state that I'm not fond of the Vincent and the Doctor episode. Neither
Moffat,
comes across to me like an after-school...
Neither Moffat nor that writer really understand depression, because they seem to have it mixed up with some form of schizophrenia.
Yeah.
Like, depression does not leave you screaming pointlessly most of the time.
No, it usually... depression affects people different ways.
It does, but...
But not making it to a babbling, ranting, screaming psychotic.
No, but Vincent had issues. By the way, the writer for Vincent and the Doctor was Richard Curtis. It was his only contribution to Doctor Who.
Yeah, he can go bite a big one.
The episode itself was not that bad. It was the fact that they turned it into a freaking special episode of Blossom.
In short, gun to the forehead, bang.
That
the
bothered
PSA
me.
hell.
I mean, if they were just going to have it with the Doctor and them going back and dealing with Vincent Price, or not Vincent Price, excuse me, going back and dealing with Vincent Price would be freaking awesome.
That would actually be a great episode.
You do realize it was probably involved in this scene running a wax museum.
But going back and dealing with Vincent Van Gogh and stopping a monster and just having that as the episode by itself, but when you add it on if you're friends with the whole depression bit, and then if you know somebody suffering from depression, I'm sorry, at that point you've turned it into a very special episode of Blossom. Go the fuck away.
Oh, it could have been worse. They could have. I suffered from depression once.
But remember, they took Vincent to the future to show him the fact that his works were acknowledged and respected. So they left him on a good note.
And then they come back to him on an even worse note.
And then we get to the Pandorica.
Yeah, so if you combine that with the way the episode actually ended, it's kind of like there's nothing you can do to stop depression. Your friend with depression will die anyway.
And then
it's kind of the way they send that episode off.
The way you're looking at Vincent, though, in this episode, he's lying on the couch, bawling his eyes out, and every time he'd look at the picture, he would go whining and moaning more. So really, you kind of see that this might have actually been the trigger. And I could buy that. He really kind of had a thing for Amy.
And that if he had whatever premonition led him to paint it, if he realized that would destroy the universe,
or at least the Doctor,
that would be a little Lovecraftian there.
Yeah. So I can see that. I can buy that. I actually have no problem with that. It's in the Pandorica Opens, which I said I have very little problem with. Most of my issues come with the hand waviness. The very last few minutes of there, in particular, bother the hell out of me because of interior continuity, especially now that we know everything about who the fuck River Song is.
Mm-hmm.
And why the fuck is she there at the end of
you like the retcons after the fact when she talks about pretending not to know Rory?
Mm-hmm.
Because that clearly was not the case in this episode.
Yes.
Even when she's all by herself, she's pretending not to know him.
Mm-hmm. And, yeah, I don't know if Stephen Moffat wrote the whole River being the daughter of Amy and Rory thing after this, or if he was just very good at hiding it.
Yeah, he was like, I don't know who to make this character. Oh, I know.
I know, the stupidest combination yet.
I mean, we've seen what happens when the Doctor is removed from the equation in Turn Left. So here he is retconned out of existence, and the universe is just fine.
That just of all kinds of levels are wrong.
I'm sorry, but the Great Intelligence should have taken over the planet in the late '60s, followed by the Cybermen.
But this is also the universe. This is also the universe that the Dalek invasion in the Stolen Earth was erased from time by
Well, I can buy that, because this means since the Doctor was erased, the Doctor never went to Skaro and tried to undo the creation of the Daleks. Therefore, the Doctor never saved Davros, and Davros never went and fought a war against the Time Lords.
Mm-hmm.
I can buy that. I can buy that.
Now that we've explained the cracks in time,
what the hell is River Song doing there? Because
now that we've explained the cracks in time, where does Prisoner Zero come from?
River Song should not be there because she is the future daughter of Rory and Amy, who would not be kidnapped by vile forces wanting to destroy the Doctor because the Doctor doesn't exist.
And I have to say, now that we know where the cracks in time came from, where did Prisoner Zero come from? Because he wasn't in the TARDIS.
Prisoner Zero was never in the TARDIS.
No, but the ending of this episode kind of implies that all the cracks in time lead to the TARDIS. That they're all kind of interconnected to one another. So what would that have to do with the whole 11th hour?
The 11th hour, the Prisoner Zero just used the crack in the universe to switch from wherever he was to Earth.
Right, but according to this episode, the cracks in time are kind of just all along where, the Doctor's path. There are two spots in the Doctor's life. The Doctor never met Prisoner Zero except on Earth, so where would they have gotten a crack to use?
It just happened to be a crack between universes, I believe is what they said in that episode.
I don't know. It's very hard to say, because the whole Moffat thing is very...
Yeah, again, it's Moffat
does tie in as well as a lot of the stuff that RTD did.
Yeah, and again, I would...
I mean, we have the voice saying, "Silence will fall," in the TARDIS. We still don't know what the fuck that is.
Yeah.
Right.
Apparently, somebody quoted Moffat saying that will all be revealed either in the 25th anniversary special or in the Christmas special that follows it.
This is also the same man.
I don't trust him.
This is the same man who admits that he's been lying his ass off about the special to keep spoilers from getting out.
I hate Moffat. I was watching.
Say what you want.
I was watching the San Diego Comic-Con Doctor Who panel, and Stephen Moffat came out, and the first thing through my mind, and I hate myself for saying this, is, oh my God, the fan base actually missed a good chance to bump his ass off because he's in public.
No shit, right? There should have been snipers in there.
Say anything you will about John Nathan Turner or even Russell T Davies. At least they could keep plotline A going straight through to plot B without...
Yeah, say what you will about John Nathan Turner, at least he fucking knew about continuity.
To some degree, yes. He actually knew freaking continuity.
To some degree, that's kind of what his entire spiel was for years.
And it is partially because he overloaded it. It is what actually wound up killing Doctor Who. But it's almost like Moffat went the exact opposite direction and hit all the problems that going the opposite direction hit.
Yeah.
He's so anti-continuity, he can't keep things straight within his own stories. Within his own story single. And that's bad.
Ooh, here we go.
He's a good writer, but God, he needs a script editor.
Oh, I see the C's. I see the C's. Look at the stream, Bill. Look at the stream.
I see the TARDIS exploding right now.
It should be back out of that pretty soon.
But let's see. Yeah, this is generally the problem I have with...
Oh, yeah, I see what you're talking about. There's definitely C's on there.
They are big as life. Yeah, they did.
Is.
Yeah, this is finally a high-res image versus the others.
Here, I'll send this over to Randy as well.
Oh yeah, Cyberseas.
Yep.
Right next to the Jadoon. But yeah, anyway.
As we were.
But so she shows up. River Song shows up at the end of this. She apparently remembers the Doctor and has dropped off the book. So Amy will remember the Doctor, so she can bring the Doctor back. Why does River remember the Doctor? Why does she exist at all? Because she's that much of a fucking Mary Sue badass.
River is also the character who comes to the wedding long enough to give Amy a reminder so
That's
that the
what I'm
universe
talking
can
about,
exist
Bill.
properly. Yeah.
Yeah. That's why is she there? The rebooted universe, she shouldn't exist at all. But not only does she exist, but she remembers the Doctor, the person nobody's supposed to exist.
Well,
Why?
that's just
Because she's that much of a fucking badass.
that's just like in another story closer where no time travel can get through to this period because there's so much temporal turbulence. Essentially, yet River can go there easily.
Yes, because
But you can't take the Doctor with her because he's not as good as her.
Yes, that's why you learn to hate River's song pretty much with a teeth-grinding passion. She's only at this point listed as a Super Sue, which is a super-powered Mary Sue. It won't be until the next season that she actually hits God Mode Sue, where she basically turns away a fixed point in the universe simply because she can. Something no Time Lord himself can do, but River just goes, meh. Without any technology behind it either. She just goes, meh. That's the point that she hits God Mode Sue. And fortunately, after that, Stephen Moffat knew to start taking her away.
Because the fan base started yelling at him.
I think part of Moffat's problem is he writes a character and he falls in love with that character. So that character starts taking the center stage. This is what happened with River's song. To an extent, people argue that people argue that's what happened with Russell T Davies and Jack Harkness. The thing is, the fan base loves Jack Harkness.
Yeah,
Right.
and he wasn't overpowered either.
And the thing is, he put Jack in his own little corner where he couldn't ruin the show if anything happened, and he also built up mysteries and gave reason for there to be room for mysteries.
Right. Jack was never really overpowered. Overused sometimes, but not overpowered.
His overpower came from John Barrowman pheromones.
Right. From John Barrowman being John Barrowman. To be able to win the day with sheer sex appeal. That was Jack Harkness's power. But it wasn't like he did anything better than the Doctor. In fact, Jack Harkness looked up to the Doctor.
And that's the thing. By the I'm trying to remember which season it was, but eventually he reached a point where he was hundreds of years older than the Doctor in terms of biological age. Well, presumably, depending, unless the Doctor is lying his ass off. Yeah, he still looks up to the Doctor as this hero that he wants to be like.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Because that was what was always good about the Doctor, is that he basically sets this moral and heroic standard that others can follow.
And that's kind of my problem with Amy. I mean, he made her a bit less selfish, but compared to the arcs that we kind of expect from companions, she really didn't change as a person. Like, she in all of her years essentially went from Rose in Rose to Rose in the Christmas Invasion, and she never really reaches that point of, Mickey in Age of Steel type of deal.
Right. I mean, you look at Donna Noble, and although all of it was undone by, what people would call the greatest tragedy in Doctor Who, but you look at the evolution of her prior to that, where she starts out as the selfish, arrogant, loudmouth...
You can call her a bitch.
Bitch. Thank you. And by the end of Series 4, prior to the whole Dr. Donna thing...
She's essentially the new Jamie.
Yes.
As being the Doctor's best friend type of deal.
Best friend. She's not selfish to that extent anymore. Her main problem seems to stem from self-confidence, if anything else. But she's grown so much as a person. And that's what you're supposed to see out of a companion, what they're supposed to do.
And even the self-confidence problem you can kind of see in The Stolen Earth. She's finally realizing, hey, I have value, I'm worth something, and I'm going to come up and out and speak here.
Yeah, I mean, well, there was, I mean, if you look through the series, there's points where she just shines. Like,
Right.
oh god, the Santaran episodes. Where they're figuring it out, and she figures out to go through the books and finds an issue. Because as a temp, she knows all about the books.
Right.
That made sense. That was beautiful. But, geez, yeah, Amy and Rory never changed that much. Rory did to an extent. Rory grew up here
Right.
by
Yeah,
Series 7.
Mm-hmm.
Rory was evolving.
And I have a feeling.
Well.
I have a feeling some of that was by fan demand. Moffat realized how much the fangirls especially loved Rory's arc through Series 5 and grew on him.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, he was kind of wishy-washy the rest of the time. I still say that Arthur Darvill would make a great Arthur Dent. And not just because of the name, is generally that wishy-washy, confused attitude he pulls off as Rory would do great as Arthur Dent, I think.
Are you just saying yeah because you're scared by me? Yeah.
That's true. He kind of in the end of the Big Bang, he's kind of playing the same character that he was in the end of the 11th Hour.
Yep. He is, because he got rebooted. At that
Right.
point, nothing that ever happened during the first season happened.
Right.
So you're scared of it? Yeah.
And of course, the memories come back because, who needs straight lines and continuity when you can have fairy tale logic?
Mm-hmm.
Just because the main important person remembers means that everyone now remembers.
And
Yep.
between all of this, I still like it better than I do the next two endings.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, the next two...
This one at least pulls off the mood part and parts of the action and everything else, whereas...
And this one at least
the
had
next
one episode of two that I liked.
The next one essentially reset buttons itself to the point where if it's going to pretend it doesn't exist, I'll pretend it doesn't exist. And then the following
the
one
entire
just
half
has
that season never existed, and I
many
suffered nothing
problems.
for it. Bye.
Yeah, and you talk about your retcons, the last season one, the season 7 one, which we reviewed, basically goes through and does all of this again with the Doctor's personal time stream. Let's undo it, and let's have the companion redo it, because she's awesome.
I'm kind of wondering when Big Finish does that story of the Doctor leaving Gallifrey, if they're going to even bother having God damn it, what's her first name? Oh, Jenna Louise Coleman come in and do that line, or if they're just gonna be like, yeah, it never happened.
They can't. They legally can't. Last time we heard.
They can't base an episode off of it. Yeah, so I mean, it would kind of need some sort of BBC permission type of deal. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that either way, they would just be like, yeah, it didn't happen.
Mm-hmm. It's just one of those things where you're like, no, it doesn't make sense.
That doesn't make sense. It doesn't need to be there. It's just being silly, and also shoehorning another fucking Doctor that was supposed to have previously existed. Are you for freaking real?
I don't know.
Shoot in the soul, Moffat, and it won't be enough to hurt you as much as you've hurt me.
Can we keep Matt Smith and lose Stephen Moffat?
Please, with sugar on top.
Moffat regenerates on Christmas instead.
Yes.
Yes. Maybe he'll regenerate to someone who has synapses in his brain that actually connect properly.
Regenerate back into RTD. I would actually applaud. Not that I think we need more of RTD's work, but
You know, after seeing what Moffat's done for the last 2 years, we could handle this some more.
Three. He's been at it for 3.
No, 3
Oh,
years,
that kind of reminds me.
2 years in particular have been really
That kind of reminds me. Is Robert Holmes still alive?
I don't think so, Tim.
'Cause
And yes, I caught Bill unaware there because he apparently never watched sitcoms in the 90s.
not really.
It was a Home Improvement reference.
Okay, I did watch that, but I'm still not sure the connection.
Nothing. It's just I don't think so. I just automatically followed it with Tim.
Oh, okay. I got you.
But that's bad idea, Tim.
Okay. I
died.
know.
Robert Holmes
I know
died almost 20 years ago.
Okay, so I was going to say, I'm surprised he hasn't written for the new show if he's still alive.
No, he actually, remember, that was part of the problem with Trial of a Time Lord, is he died while making the final bits.
But then how did he write the... Oh, that's right, the Two Doctors was before Trial of the Time Lord.
Yes, it was. It was the season before, and then he was supposed to be writing... He wrote The Mysterious Planet, and he was supposed to write the end part of it, and then he died.
For some reason, I was thinking he wrote for McCoy, but I guess not then.
Nope. He was writing for it. He died. Eric Saward started working on it, but then he quit, and they gave it to Pip and Jane Baker. And it turned out to be a gigantic what the fuck. But no, so that's why we haven't seen him for the new series, and we can't regenerate back to Robert Holmes.
We can't. I was just thinking, it's about damn time he's the producer.
What's that?
I was just thinking, if if he was around, it would be about damn time he'd be the producer. He's done everything else on the show except executive producer. He was script editor, which nowadays is close enough, close to the same thing in terms of part of the role.
Yep, and we can't regenerate to John Nathan Turner either. He died in 2002.
Although he also would be an improvement.
Can we regenerate into Nick Briggs, because by all accounts he's done some really great Doctor Who work, both as a writer, director, and producer.
Well, if Moffat steps down, I don't know who else we have to pick up the slack.
They would probably give it to his little protege, Mr. Gaddis.
Oh, God help us.
Which would probably be more of the same, although I don't know, he might have some original ideas we haven't seen.
Yeah, well, mind you, when Moffat took over, Moffat was essentially, RTD's number 2.
Yeah.
And we figured we'd be having more of the same, maybe darker and scarier.
Mm-hmm.
Which would have been awesome.
And instead we got Fairy Tale Doctor.
To which facepalm.
I'm like, the fuck? No, Moffat, this is not what you're known to do.
I can tell you. Actually, yeah, it's kind of hard to tell what was what the actor, what the writer chose versus what the producer said. Hey, you're the writer. I want to do this. So yeah, I mean, even if we had a Gaddis as head writer, he wouldn't necessarily write the historicals he's known for. He might actually have something else that nobody's ever chosen for him to do.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, the fact that Moffat did it like this, the Fairy Tale, and he was known for being the guy that, put the scare back into Doctor Who.
Right.
Always.
Well, he was chosen in Doctor Who for sex comedy. So.
Really?
That's apparently why he was chosen to introduce Captain Jack and then to introduce Madame de Pompadour.
Madame de Pompadour didn't really go anywhere.
Well, I mean, in terms of to write that episode.
But
RTD said, we want this episode and I want him to write it.
But, you think about, what he did. I mean, Empty Child Doctor Dances is probably still the most scary, suspenseful Doctor Who we've had to date.
Yeah.
I mean, I made the mistake of watching that at 2 a.m. in the dark with the lights out. And I was freaking terrified.
I'm pretty sure, Dalek is kind of what hooked me to Doctor Who, but watching The Empty Child of the Doctor Dances is pretty much what I was like, okay, I'm not stopping.
Well, I was already addicted scum by then, but yeah.
Right.
But that was just like, oh my God, okay, this is freaking awesome. And I looked forward to, his every year to his work, and I never really had much issue with his work. I liked Blink. I know a lot of people don't like Blink, or a lot of people do.
I quite like Blink.
A lot of people like Blink to the point where I like it, but I feel it's overrated.
I like it. I don't think it's the greatest thing ever written, but I enjoyed it. I found it to be suspenseful. I found it to be interesting. I like Silence in the Library and Forest of the Dead. And again, a lot of people don't like it because they didn't like River Song's first appearance. I'm the other way around. Silence in the Library, Forest of the Dead's the only time I've actually tolerated River Song.
And then his next contribution was the 11th Hour, which was pretty much unilaterally.
Which we've said is the pretty much the best 11th Doctor episode to date. Although that may be, I may have changed that with the Neil Gaiman episodes.
Yep.
But it's Moffat's best work to date. Followed closely by the beginning of Series 7, The Bells of St. John.
Oh, yeah.
Which I think we all liked.
Yes.
Yeah, it's amazing how he turned from that episode, which was really awesome and really great.
Well, he had a lot of
he had a lot of time.
He had a lot of time to work on that episode, and he knew it had to live up, or else the show would die. And that episode lived up, but the season didn't quite.
Everything else that came after it was kind of bad. Neil Gaiman's episode was
kind of a downhill slide because the 3 episodes after that we didn't hate, but we felt they were kind of average generally, and then it just progressively slid downward.
It wasn't really we thought they were average. They were lacking something.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think next 3 episodes 3 out of 5 averages.
Yeah, because I think it was like the episode after that, I liked the first half, hated the second half. And I think the episode after that, hated the first half, liked the second half.
Yeah.
That was that. Yeah, that was right, because the one after that was the Weird Planet.
Yeah.
And I liked the whole setup for it, but once they started singing, I just lost interest. And then the episode after that was the Submarine, where they tried to do Cold War tension and failed. But the alien loosed on the submarine was I thought was very well done.
Yep.
And then we got to Journey of the Center of the TARDIS, which was the low point. Was the what the hell is this crap?
Oh, don't forget Hyde, which is in between.
Hyde was okay. It just had a couple of continuity holes.
Yeah.
It could have been better. That was the only one I think I was really mediocre on.
And some concept holes like, hey, let's bring the deadly monster back to Earth so that it and its mate can populate a different planet.
Right.
Not like we really know that these things are naturally violent or anything.
Nor do we know the opposite.
Right. That was kind of wishy-washy. Yeah. And then, we had Journey to the Center of the TARDIS, which was absolutely abysmal. And did we immediately follow that with Neil Gaiman's episode?
No, after that was Gaddis's episode, Crimson Horror.
Oh, Crimson Horror, yeah.
Which I had some issues with that episode.
But not
mostly in bad guys that have no real motive.
Yeah.
And then, other than Hyde, were evil. And some of the technology differential was annoying the crap out of me. Then we had Neil Gaiman's episode, which was good, but could have been better in a couple of places. It really needed Neil Gaiman to look at it, it really needed Moffat to look at it and go, can you fix this, and this? And it could have been done, and that would have made it great, you know?
Yeah.
Instead, he lets everything slide lately, which is.
And then we had the finale, which was rage-inducing, epileptic-inducing. Pretty much from moment one, it pissed me off.
So, anywho, I think we are about the point where we should probably be closing this.
Yep, we're right around there.
We're right around the point where we should be giving our ratings here. Yep. I was about to get to that.
So shall I do it since I mentioned it first?
Yeah, you go ahead, Matt.
Oh, so I think the first episode, yeah, I can let that one slide. There are some technical problems, but I can let that slide. The second episode did feel a bit watered down, and explanations are still not given to this point as to what was actually going on and what caused all this to happen in the first place. So that kind of brings it down a bit. So, 3, I guess? Not a very strong 3, but barely sitting there.
That's generally what 3 is, anyway.
Yeah.
Yep. How about you, Bill?
I'm in the vicinity of 3, but I do feel this is an episode that is entertaining. At parts, it's fun to watch. It's something that I'd be willing to go back to more than some other episodes. So I think I'm going to leave it with a 3.5.
Okay. Well, yeah, I have to rate these individually and then take the average. Like Matt said, I really like the first episode. Yes, it's a downer, but it's a downer that in its own way makes sense with a couple of minor hitches. It is good drama. You have good acting, good scenes, everything. As it would stand, the first episode would get a 4.5 out of 5 for me.
Yeah.
The second episode is its complete and polar opposite. It is confusing. It is written with fuzzy time logic. You have events leading to events and events happening because of said events. It doesn't follow any known rule of time at one. Any rules of time are taking place simultaneously and enough that you will get a time headache. And that's even for people that normally can deal with time matters. I'm one of those people. This episode hurts. There's a lot of repetitiveness, like when you see the doctor come across to Rory the first half, and then he does it again, and he still goes back, and we see the Rory scenes again. There are some good, at the moment, character drama, but it's really overshadowed by a lot of hand-waviness, a lot of Moffat really trying to be clever and not succeeding.
Why do they hate the Fez?
So, I would have to give this episode a 1.5 out of 5.
So that puts you with a 3 out.
That puts me with a solid 3.
So 3 and a 3.5.
And
So that leaves us with a
lot
3.167 for the two-parter.
And yeah, that's our rating for the Pandorica Opens and the Big Bang. Tune in next week when we will do something else entirely, as we have now covered one particular serial from every Doctor up till now. We'll tell you next week what different tack we're going with.
Yep, we'll figure that out.
Again, that'll be Sunday at around 3 p.m.
I'll find out.
3 Central, 4 Eastern, 1 Pacific.
Etc.
Yes, 3 p.m. 3 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Mountain, 1 p.m. Pacific. And if you're outside of the United States, you'll have to do the math yourself.
5 hours in Britain, I believe. Bye!
Depending on daylight